interesting that she managed to catch that. But no, absolutely. I'm going to get started just because this will be recorded and I don't want too long, like too many minutes of it, to just be me getting set up and sharing it on my Instagram and things like that. So let me do this one last post and then we'll get going. Otherwise, I hope whoever's here, if you're doing well. I put a poll, and what do you call it? I put a poll up um, in the thing. So if you have a chance to fill out the poll, that would be awesome. And paste that. Done. Share to my story into Facebook. Okay. And where's my TikTok? Otherwise, yeah, so today's topic is super exciting, close to my heart. Um, it's really, as a mortgage broker, one of the things that you deal with in finance is housing affordability, right? It's like the first thing is, how much can I afford when someone is looking for a home to buy? And it's quite interesting because it's not to say, and I think everybody gets it in their head, like I should not buy a house at the top of my price range, right? Like that's what everybody says. And you'd be surprised, everyone does it. Everyone does it, and I don't know what it is about money that does that to us, that we end up constantly at the top of our budget on everything, whether it's, it's this actual finances or purchases or whatever the case may be. So the reason I'm doing these lives is to kind of give an introduction to how I see money, I guess, and like the workshops that I do offer and the way that I approach things, because I want people to be familiar with the way I do things so that they know, right? When they're approaching me, that this is, the angle that she's going to be coming from, that kind of thing. So I never want people to be surprised whenever they approach me and be like, oh, I wasn't expecting you to, to say that or to be like that or whatever the case may be. And so I really try to be as transparent as possible and always want the best for people. So I think that's good, because I always say your success is my success, and it's amazing to be part of a group of people that are successful, right? To be in a community of successful people makes a big difference in that regard. So I'm doing Facebook Live. Okay, well, that took me 9 minutes today. Apologize for that. I'm gonna write getting started now, so that whenever I am doing it, it's easy enough for me to remember when I did get started and when I was doing it. Okay, so great. My name is Grace Villa. I'm a financial coach. Used to be a financial advisor, but now I'm a coach as I no longer maintain my licensing. I'm a strong believer in sending people off to licensed advisors, because I think it's huge to work with someone who's continually getting the training in the industry and they're able to stay up to date. Regardless of what you're looking for. So I'm a licensed mortgage broker, so my area of expertise is on mortgage financing, which when you say mortgage financing, it's really just lending off of your home. So any type of equity, any type of land, asset, something that you could take collateral on, I can lend on. So I did commercial lending for a long time. And so yes, using both that expertise in commercial as well as in residential lending is what I do. And so let's get started. So on the side, so I do coaching is what I do, and that's why I introduced myself as a financial coach. And so in the coaching sessions, they're really created to reflect the needs of the clientele and to reflect the needs of my clients. And so one of the things that we first start off with, like we did last week, if you didn't have a chance to watch that video from last week, feel free to look for it. But we always start off with values. So I'm going to write that, start off with values. And that's super important to me because um, the one thing that we're going to continue going back and forth on in the Bible, there's a verse that it says, well, there's two. So one says, hope deferred makes the heart weak. And so sometimes as, people who are working with our own money, our own values, we may or may not um, be confident about the decisions that we're making. But the problem that we have in life is hope is like something you can't see. And and it's one of those things you can't lie about because it's intangible. It's, when somebody says like, what do you want to do when you grow up? Or, why are you doing this? You can give them whatever answer you want, but your heart knows the truth, right? So that's why I love the verse where it says, hope deferred makes a heart weak. So setting goals that we don't reach or that we can't reach, or, however the reaching doesn't happen, or it gets delayed or gets pushed off, whether it's financial, emotional, educational, or whatever, it really has a solid impact on us as individuals. And so that's why that statement of hope deferred makes our heart weak is a big part of our budgeting and our planning. And then a longing fulfilled is sweet to the soul. So that one I love because for sure, when you're absolutely feeling encouraged and you've hit the goals and the targets that you want, like um, it makes a big difference, right? When you hit that goal and you're able to do what you want. Um, and so those two things are really important and they're part of values. And I'm just going to type that in here. And that's why when we start with budgeting or in any type of sessions that I'm leading, I always start with values. And again, if you didn't have a chance to watch that, watch the video last week. We talked a lot about values. And so on on today's topic, we are going to be talking about cash flow and budgeting. And everyone always says, Grace, I need help with the budget. And it's like, I hate to say it, but no, you don't. What you need is to figure out what it is that you want in life. What it is you need to figure out what you want financially. You need to understand what it is that you want. Um, because when you understand that, there's nothing stopping you from hitting that goal. Um, and that's one thing that I really, really love to emphasize is, you don't need a budget. You don't need a budget. You need you need a goal line. You need a goal line. That's all it is. You just need to know what is it that I'm after. Like the everyday, what do they say? Like, don't, it's not about the destination, it's about the journey. I think that's true. The budget is part of the journey, but I think it's more true in the essence of the goal still needs to resonate with you. The goal still needs to be aligned with you. The goal still needs to fit into who you are and what it is that you want. Otherwise, you're not going to hit the goal. And if you do, it's not going to resonate with you. It's not going to hit that button. It's not going to hit that a longing fulfilled, this sweet to the soul button. And I think that's what's really important to catch and to note, that it's really, really important. um, Give me 1 second. I thought I did this earlier, and I guess we didn't. About 15 minutes in. Okay, sorry, 1 minute. I just need to address something really quickly on this. I don't know where my screen went, and I need to see my screen. Where's my dashboard, Facebook? Okay, there it is. Whew. It had gone. Okay, sorry about that. Just gonna close some windows because Facebook is now complaining. I've got too many windows open. Okay, so I'm gonna leave that alone. So we're gonna go on. So what did I say? Okay, you need to, yeah, the goal is not going to resonate with you. The budget lines are not going to resonate with you as much as, yes, I agree. The journey is what matters, is what we're saying, right? The journey matters. It's not just about the goal. And the reason that matters is because the goal may not resonate with you. And so, yes and no to that kind of statement. What I like really it's biblical. It's where Jesus, and everyone always quotes him when he was talking about don't start don't start building until you cost out like a whole project, because you don't want to be the person people talk about, saying, oh, he was just building and he didn't even manage to finish, right? um, and and I think that's important to know what you want, what you need to finish. Because he wasn't even talking about money, but then he gave an example of money, and I think that's so telling about how tangible finances are in terms of our identity. And I think I've said it before in other videos that the reason money is such a key factor in divorce or relationships and all that stuff is because it really is the ability and the place where in which you can express your identity. And so when people feel like their money, whether it's how much they make, how much they have, where they live, any of that, if when they feel like it doesn't really express their identity, then they feel like a disconnect from it, right? And then that's when you see someone, you're like, oh, we started budgeting together, and they're no longer interested in what you're doing together, and it's just because it no longer resonated with them. And I think that's a really key thing to take away from what Jesus is saying, because he was talking about people following him and saying, don't start following me if you don't really think you can handle it. And I think that that's telling, like, don't start a budget, don't start a project if you don't think you can keep up with it. And that's really all he was saying. And I think the reason he used the word money, I think the reason he used money, sorry, is because of that issue. He wanted to really emphasize. He wanted to really emphasize that aspect because people can understand it. It's such an explicit example. He started building and he had no idea if he was going to be able to finish it. So it's not a budget thing, it's a commitment thing. Anything that we do just needs to be, and here I am messing with my dress again, sorry. Anything that we do needs to be intentional. And when we say it needs to be intentional, we really do mean that. Like, it actually needs to line up with who you are, and it needs to be about who you are. And once that lines up, it's easy enough for you to stick with the budget. And so don't just say, oh, what did you say? 2026 is my year. I'm going to do things different financially. Start with why. This isn't a preaching, but when Jesus says, follow me, like right before then, he's like, you got to know the cost of this. Like, you're going to lose your family. You're going to lose your friends. You're going to be a completely different person if you're committing to me. And it's the same thing with money. I think I just read like a different thread just a little while ago, and he was talking about how when it comes to getting out of debt, it's a commitment. It's a lifestyle change. It's intentional. It's going to mean hanging out with those friends less. It's going to mean not being able to do the things that you've always loved doing. And I think the meme, I don't know if it's a meme. I don't know what qualifies as a meme versus a post, but the whole point of it was to say, don't. Can I write that question down? What is a meme? What is a post? Yeah. The whole point of it was to say exactly that. Don't take it for granted. Give me 1 second. Yeah, don't take it for granted when you're committing to something. Really think about, what is the actual cost of this for me, right? What am I going to lose? Am I going to be able to hang out with the same family? Am I going to be able to hang out with in the same groups? Am I going to be chill in the same circles, right? What is the actual cost to this decision that I'm making? And I think that definitely is something that needs to be said, right? Like, you've got to be aware of it, and yeah, you need to be good with it. And the other part of that, let me just go back to my notes, sorry, to what he was saying about that, and I think it's interesting with the budget, is different personalities really require different methods. And I think that's a key part of how I approach budgeting and how we approach cash flows and I mean, it's something that I address in the book that I'm writing as well, about couples. You really need to know the person that you're working with. Are they a person who can drill down on the journey, without, like, little cheats here and there? Like, I'll give myself an example. I can work hard. I'm a hard worker, don't get me wrong, but I need a vacation. I need to be by the water, and I live by the ocean, when I'm in Canada. So, but still, but I need to be like by warm water, and in the, in there, and I need that like every 3 to 6 months. No, 6 months is too long. I need that every 3 months, and that's just the reality of who I am. I can work super hard, but I've got to price in the fact that I need this in my life. I need to travel, and then I can get back to work and do it all over again. But I am that person, right, who needs a break. I need a reason to step away from it all. I can't be in it. And then other people can grind for years and just do what needs to be done, focus, get it done, and then after some years, thank you, Muzukuru. I see you. This one, you always has my back. Love that. Thank you. Um, so yeah, so super important, on that one, to recognize your personality before you commit to something, right? Um, and I'm calling a budget a commitment because that's really what it is. It's a commitment that needs to fit with who you are, and it's a commitment that needs to resonate with who you are. Um, and so, yeah, so before you even sit there and say 2026 is my year financially, and you start setting up your cash flow goals for what it is that you need, just ask yourself, am I feeding my soul? Right? Am I feeding who I am? And some of that feeding, it might actually just be doing volunteer work. It might just be working with other people, in different communities, reaching out, and it might be going places. It might just be exposing yourself to different things, like, when I travel. So I do experiences by grace, so I do trip planning, and I love, going to villages and meeting the people, in countries, because majority of people in most countries are not the upper class who can afford a hotel, who can afford, to go to the sites. I mean, most of you, if you're listening, you can think of all the popular sites in your community that you've never been to, but tourists will travel and go to, right? So, I usually like going to see where the people are, right? I'll take the bus, I'll take the train. Um, if I can head out to a village and, go to the local market and grocery shop, just, to be around the people. I love that. But I also love a 5 star, um, experience. There's nothing more than I love to just be able to let my hair down and just relax, whether it's dance or just enjoy the fact that I have that privilege. I like to do that too, right? So when you're doing your budget, ask yourself, as much as maybe this is something I can't do all the time, is getting it here and there going to be enough? What's your personality type? Is the, like, I, again, there's that whole like latte a day will kill your budget or whatever, but like, I don't get my hair done. I don't get my nails done. I barely go shopping for clothes, but at the same time, I could blow that same amount on a vacation, that you spent getting your hair done and your thing. So it's like a balance, right? You really need to balance it out until you're at a point in your life you don't need to balance. You can get that cash flow working for you to a point where you're not making choices anymore, right? Your future planning is taken care of. Your present planning is taken care of. All your needs are taken care of. Then, when you're at that point, you don't need to think about balancing. But when you are doing your budget and setting up your cash flow, ask yourself those things. Um, what do I need? Yeah, right? What's my personality need? Um, there's lots of different apps that are out there for helping people with budgeting. There's lots of things about couples sit down once a week and, have that conversation. But like, what if you're dragging, right? What if you're dragging someone to sit down and have this conversation? Is there another way you can use technology to have that conversation with them financially, where A, they don't feel lectured, and B, they don't feel dragged, right? There's different ways we can use technology now to help us communicate. And when you're communicating about the money, remember, it's not honey, we need to talk about our money. It's honey, we need to talk about how are we expressing our identity as a family financially, right? Think about that. We need to have this conversation. Is our money resonating with us as a family, right? What does that look like, right? I see a lot of times where people have a disconnect with their jobs, like the actual work that they do doesn't resonate with them emotionally, right? It doesn't feed into who they are, and so they hate their job. The industry doesn't feed them, it feeds their family, but them, they're deprived. They're not feeling enriched, right? There's nothing about that longing that's fulfilled. And so if you're in that boat and it's a cash flow issue, maybe the work you're doing is meeting you cash flow wise, but not emotionally. Is there a way in which you can find that emotional fulfillment in different aspects of your life, right? Are there other gaps outside of work? And that's important because part of the reason people have a hard time retiring, which is a different cash flow issue altogether. You'll hear someone say, I've got 2 million in savings. I'm not sure if I'll retire at 65. I'm not sure I have enough. And the reality is it has nothing to do with the actual funds. The question is about my identity financially, right? The question is about my identity in the workplace. So your cash flow is a reflection. I'm just going to write that reflection of your identity. Okay. And so when I'm working with people really on cash flows, those are some of the questions um, that we're really asking is is about our money. Does it resonate? Okay, so I'll start from the top, back to our original goal of hope. Deferred makes the heart weak, right? When you're working, there's things that you want. You may not be able to express them, whether to your partner or to yourself, but it's really important that you understand that if they're not expressed, they're just suppressed, right? Um, expressed, I'll write that down, not expressed, they are suppressed. You can't take it away. It sounds terrible to say, but some desires, you can't take them away. You can't meet them in the middle. You can't compromise your way, like there's just certain things in life that we want that compromise isn't gonna do. And just because you're not able to express it to your spouse or to your family or whatever doesn't mean it's gonna go away. So find a way in which I'd encourage you, whether it's bringing in a third party like myself to kind of help you guys manage those conversations. That's the difference between an advisor and a coach, right? We're really just about expression and really about finding your fulfillment. I'll bring it back to homes really quick here. I've got about 12 more minutes, yeah. So I'll bring it back to houses for a minute here. Houses are an expression of your identity. Mortgage purchase. Some people will say, oh, I don't care. I never want to own a home. It's expensive. It's whatever. You go deeper into the conversation, and it's more so, I'm not sure how I can get there to that point of having a down payment, right? Or I'm not really sure if I'm ready for a commitment to payments, right? A lot of times I don't want, what we used to call a starter home, right? Um, the small thousands, it's not even small, guys. 1,000 square feet is a lot of space. 1,000 square feet, 3 bedroom house, on a small lot, in a decent neighborhood in the city, walkable schools, that used to be um, a starter home, right? And in most cities, that still really is. And it's just, and someone may say, I don't really want to buy a house, but it's because for them, that's not the style of house that they would want, is what they can't afford. And so the house doesn't fit their identity, and so they wouldn't want to commit to that. And they can see that what they would want is going to take them a longer commitment. So, a lot of times, if you're in a situation like that and you're not sure that that's what someone in your life is expressing, I can tell you a lot of times they'll make excuses or set up unreasonable goals, right? They won't give you a straight answer, and those are some of the ways that you can see that what I'm trying to achieve does not fit their mindset. It's not within where they're looking at goal wise. And so in talking about identity and in talking about goals and needs, even as an individual, it's again really important when you're sitting down with yourself. Maybe you set goals for the first, for the year, and we're what, 6 7 weeks into the year, and you realize you're nowhere near those goals. It's important to ask yourself why. Like, go back to where we started and ask yourself, why did I set this goal? I probably should actually read the scripture. Um, Give me 1 second to find it. But it's important to ask yourself, why am I setting this goal? So in Luke 14, verse 25, this is where we got the scripture from. It says, a large crowd was following Jesus, and he turned around and said to them, if you want to be my disciple, you must, by comparison, hate everyone else, your father and your mother, wife, children, brothers and sisters, yes, even your own life. Otherwise, you cannot be my disciple. And if you cannot carry your own cross and follow me, you cannot be my disciple. And I mean, it sounds crazy that he says something so heavy, like leave your family behind, like your religion, your whole life that you've known, really cut all that off. Everything you've been taught by society, everything that you've ever thought was important is now no longer important if you're going to follow me. And it's such a radical statement. But what's worse, or not worse, but more important that I want you to understand is the example that he gives is about finance. He says, but don't begin until you count the cost. Okay? So when you're sitting there saying, I'm going to start a budget, I really want to know what's going on with my money, that's a good start. But don't say, I want to start a budget because I want to save this much money, or I have this goal. That's why I want to start a budget. Unless, like he says, don't begin until you count the cost. Are you ready to say no to family and friends when they have ideas and events that they want you to come to? Are you ready to give up your own life as you know it? Right? And he says, if you can't carry your own cross, like if you can't be self-disciplined enough to follow through on what you're committing to, don't even follow me. He says, don't even follow me. Don't bother me. Don't bother yourself. So if you're setting up a goal and you're saying, okay, I'm only going to use $20 in cash this week, and the first week you've taken out $25 in cash, just walk away. Let it go. It's not for you. Whether it's a diet, whether it's a budget, whatever it is in life, if you're trying to commit to something or trying to make a change and it's not working, start by what he says. Don't begin until you count the cost. Okay? And then he gives the example of for who would begin construction of a building without first calculating the cost to see if there's enough money to finish it. Otherwise, you might complete only the foundation before running out of the money, and then everyone would laugh at you. They would say, there is a person who started that building and couldn't afford to finish. Don't start anything. And then he gives an example of a king who would go to war against another king without first sitting down with his counselors to discuss whether his army of 10,000 could defeat the 20,000 soldiers marched against him. Like, that's how big finance is. It's compared to warfare. The two comparisons he gives, one is warfare and one is finances. This is a real war. Like, it's a proper battle. It's a proper us versus them. Right? You are proper David in this world of money, but you can do this. You just need to first sit there and ask yourself, am I ready to count the cost? Am I ready to do this? And it says about the soldier with the tent, and if he can't, he'll send a delegation to discuss the terms of peace while the enemy is still far away. And that's important. Again, it's another step. Like, if you realize that, okay, this isn't working, right? Sit down with counselors, like he says, right? Sit down with your counselors to discuss a way. There's got to be a way, right? Just because you're sitting there in a situation and you're sitting there thinking there is no way, sit down with counselors and get it done. You got this. You could do it. You just can't do it alone, most likely, right? And it's funny that he uses a delegation to discuss the terms of peace while the enemy's still far away. It's a big part in like foreclosure or when you're dealing with debt. The first thing you're often told when it's overwhelming is sit down, look at it, start calling your creditors and seeing who you can negotiate with, right? Don't wait until it gets bad. Sit down and discuss the terms of peace while the enemy is still far away. And then he says, so you can't become my disciple without giving up everything you own. Okay? So I'll just, because I read the rest of it, I'll just close it off. He says, salt is good for seasoning, but if it loses its flavor, how do you make it salty again? And again, that's so crucial. You lose your identity in some of these things. You know, you can lose yourself in your money. You could lose yourself in your finances. You could lose who you are if you let it go too far before trying to solve the situation. Don't sit on it. Don't hope for a better day without doing anything different. 2026 is your financial year, but there's a few steps you need to do. Flavorless salt is neither good for the soil nor for the manure pile. It's thrown away. Anyways, he concludes with anyone with ears to hear should listen and understand. So I will leave that for you there. That's Luke chapter 14, verse 25 to the finish, which I believe is 32. I don't know if anyone logged in. I don't know what I did wrong on this one, but I'm hoping somebody and their mother, okay, let's say, heard me, or is able to watch this down the line. But yeah, like it says, anyone who has ears, let them hear. And 35. I'm just gonna quickly summarize where he starts off. As they say, count the cost. Count the cost. Be ready to give up who you are now and what society expects of you. Okay? And be ready to determine whether to count the cost. Really take stock. Take stock of what you'll need. You'll need to win the battle. Don't go to war. Don't go to war without counselors. Right? And it's a large battle. Negotiate. Negotiate peace while the enemy is still far away. Still far away. And then, don't lose your identity. Because it's a long way back. Alright? And whoever has ears to hear should listen and understand. Anyways. And that's it. That is it for today. Quite a bit. We've covered. I know. Expecting a spreadsheet. So if you do sign up for the lessons, the individual counseling lessons on their own, at some point you will get a spreadsheet. At some point, I will tell you to send me statements, and we'll take a look at it. That is true. We do get there eventually, but like I said, everything starts with values, and it's really, really important that we understand, the basis of what we're doing and why we're doing it. If there are no more questions, there's a lot less engagement today. I gotta figure out what I did differently today. But yeah, otherwise, we'll see you next week. I think next week is investing. I could be wrong, but it's there in the calendar, it's in the chart. Inbox me, reach out if you need any advice, if you have any questions. If you're watching the video after, you can always inbox me for any advice. Otherwise, website deservegrace.com. Email grace gracegenis@gmail.com. And yeah, thanks for watching. All the best.